What's up, everybody? It is here. It is the final game of the summer of soccer. Well, maybe not the final game. Depends if you're watching the Women's World Cup. I know we are, but we're not talking about it on air. So it's the final game of our Summer of Soccer series for 2025. Don't worry, there will be one next year, I imagine. But guys, this has been a very fun run. We just finished up the Gold Cup. Unfortunately, for those that were rooting for America, didn't work out for you. Mexican fans, I know you're really happy right now. But here we are going into the Club World Cup in America. We are ending with two teams out of Europe. Surprise, surprise. Well, this tournament, it might actually be a surprise with who these two finalists are, at least one of them. We have PSG and Chelsea matching up, and before we get into it, I'm going to welcome back this rowdy crew of characters I have with me. It's Hector from Insert Name FC and Nik, a blog writer for Belly Up Sports. Guys, how are you guys doing, and how has this summer of soccer been for you? Nik, go ahead.
Doing good. It's been plentiful and bountiful. It's filled me up. Taking the time after the NBA Finals where there's not really a lot of sports on, so I'm glad.
Yeah, Hector, how about you? How you enjoying the summer of soccer?
The summer of soccer sucks.
We'll get into why it sucks in just a minute for you. I know we're gonna have to talk about it. Unfortunately, I'm sorry. There's been a couple rough rides for Hector this summer, both on a national team level and in a Club World Cup level. But yeah, we're going to talk about it in a minute. But as I said, it is PSG. It is Chelsea. It's finally here, right? It's been a long fight. It's been 32 teams. Now we're down to two. And they've dealt with the heat. They've dealt with the change in fields. They've dealt with the no fans showing up. They've dealt with full fans showing up. They've dealt with the South American flair, the European complaints. Those are all gone now. We're left with two. It's going to be in a fantastic stadium in a test run, really, for what is the World Cup in 2026. This is going to be a test run for the World Cup finals. And so now we're here wondering, PSG coming off a Champions League last year, Chelsea, a team that you're just questioning, who's going to be the best team? So let's start with PSG, guys. Starting with PSG, I think it's just safe to say, let's talk about the knockout stage, right? How'd they get here? Well, 4-0, Inter Miami. Sorry, Messi. You couldn't beat your old team. 2-0 over Bayern Munich. There was no Harry Kane appearances whatsoever. I don't know what I was thinking Bayern Munich was going to be there. And a moment of silence for Hector's Real Madrid and Kylian Mbappe. Nothing from him. Could not get off the snide against PSG. Telling story there. Two former PSG players could not beat their former team. This younger PSG team, this paid-for younger PSG team, I think is worth saying, is making all the headway. And Hector, let's start with you here. First of all, I'm sorry that I have to start here. But secondly, how do you feel about PSG's run so far in the knockout stage? Has it been dominant? Has it been one of those things just unheard of before?
I wouldn't even just talk about the summer. I mean, this was the year of PSG. You know, all the things that went into this past season for them when you let Kylian Mbappe go for nothing because, you know, his contract ran out and went and joined Real Madrid freshly after Real Madrid winning a Champions League title. And you weren't entirely sure what this team was going to be capable of. Obviously, you know, people well, if you ask a Barca fan, they probably don't want to even think about the name of Ousmane Dembele, of how poorly that just panned out for him, his time over there. You had a lot of players that maybe you're not entirely sure. I mean, Vitinha, a guy that couldn't even really make the lineup for Wolves. You know, a really unique group, a really awesome group of players, and on top of that, with a masterful mind like Luis Enrique, who I would argue is the best manager in the world right now. I think that there's no ifs, ands, buts about it. I mean, this is a PSG project that's gone on for years when the Qatari money came into play in here. You know, so when you got to see like a Zlatan Ibrahimovic, Edson Cavani, then you saw the Neymar, Mbappe, however many players that the stars among stars. David Beckham even played here at one point. Yeah. It's an interesting.
Ronaldinho came again.
Ronaldinho, well, maybe not again.
He was at the very beginning of it all with Zion.
Yeah, that was before the money happened. Yep. But yeah, I mean, like this is a combination of what this PSG ownership was trying to do, was to make this team one of the best teams in the world. I mean, it's Paris, right? It's the city of lights, the Eiffel Tower, everything that you can think of. You know, why not then become a dominant force in football? And They did it this year. I mean, I think a lot of people doubted them. I mean, Kelcey, you and me were talking about it on Insert Name FC when they were undefeated in the first half of the season, and we're like, why aren't we talking about this? And we're like, oh, it's because it's League On, it's the Farmers League, if you will. Well, that team, even though they didn't finish undefeated, they still went on an amazing run after a really horrendous start in their Champions League campaign, and just mollywopped everybody after destroying Lille, reminding themselves, oh yeah, that's right, we're PSG, we're a lot of good players. But the guys that came out of this team, while yes, Dembele, who I think is now the very much clear front runner for the Ballon d'Or. And on top of it, he's French, so the French media can't deny it. So I mean, I think that this has been his season. He's been a standout. You're talking about Desiree Doué. I mean, a guy that maybe not one of us knew much about. I mean, if you watch League One, which I'm sure not many people really do, you wouldn't know what this kid was capable of. Goes into PSG, and I don't think they expect him to be a starter right away, but impactful immediately. Vitinha becoming what everyone never thought he could be when he was at Wolves. Some people were shocked to believe that he wasn't even starting for Wolves. And João Neves, another good name, plays midfield for PSG, but then plays right back for Portugal. Make sense. And then of course Donnarumma, the guy that betrayed AC Milan and comes and goes to PSG for the money. Well, guess what? It paid off for him because he had one of the best campaigns for any goalkeeper as well. And might be fair to argue goalkeeper of the tournament, the way he's been performing. So I think that, and on top of that, you got Luis Enrique. And I always look back at that moment, that video clip of Luis Enrique criticizing Mbappe, having the balls to tell Mbappe, you idolize Michael Jordan. Well, guess what? Michael Jordan comes back and defends. Michael Jordan does this, does that whole. Obviously, I'm paraphrasing at this point because he spoke in Spanish, but calling out Mbappe for his BS. And now as a Madrista, now I have to put up with it. So it is what it is. But I mean, at the same time, this team, you didn't expect them to lose their best player and then be better off without him. You know, to finally win the Champions League, and now they're on the cusp of possibly winning 7 trophies in their campaign.
That's crazy, right? 7 trophies. Think about that. Like, we talk about doubles, we talk about trebles, we talk about quads. No, they're pulling a 7. What is that? Septa, whatever septa is.
Yeah.
You know,
Septuple?
Yeah.
Septuple.
I mean,
Would that
we're
be what it is?
talking. This is unheard of potentially coming up, and we'll talk a little bit, about that potential. Look, pulling off the UEFA FIFA double in itself is never. It's not really often that you see that. It mostly is European teams, well, not your non-European teams that win it for so long because they were played in Saudi Arabia, they were played in China, they were played in Korea, played in Japan. They weren't actually played in a time frame that worked for European squads, and they didn't require the European squads to send their top players, so they never played the best players there. Now, Nick, Hector said a lot there, and one thing I want to double down on here is this Luis Enrique and this squad, right? We talked about, I mentioned in the lead-in, this is a paid-for young team, but it's not PSG just paying for players. They're paying for developmental players. They are really talented players, but they are developing them beyond where they were coming in. What do you make of this squad and how Luis Enrique has handled it? I mean, Hector talked about it. He called out Mbappe. Nobody calls out the world's biggest star at the time, young star at the time, and he does it. He calls him out. He leaves. This team gets better somehow. How do you feel about this squad? Luis Enrique leading it. What's your thoughts?
I would say my word for PSG is unselfish. That they have basically done all of this, and any game, like, you could name 3 or 4 or 5 different players on their team and say that player is going to be the player of the game and they're going to win, and you wouldn't bat an eye. They have so many different ways to hurt you. I think one of the big things that stand out to me is there was I think it was Hakimi or Mendes in the UCL final ran up field, and Dembele, who's supposed to be the center forward, sprinted to right back or left back to cover for them. And not a lot of teams have that. And the way Luis Enrique has kind of cultivated this unselfish squad of highly paid for talent without, there's really no real, obviously winning helps, but there's no real this ego in this dressing room is really hard. I think a little bit is because all of them haven't ever like tasted this level of success. Like Kvicha, he did win the Serie A with Napoli, but he never went far in the Champions League. And then Dembele kind of almost had his like prima donna period with Barcelona. And Doué, he's so young, he doesn't know. And if you look at Vitinha, Hector mentioned Wolves, he failed at a Premier League club, or at least wasn't brought back on loan. And they had to go back to Portugal. And then he had to basically go a step down in the ladder to come back up. And then João Neves, he was pretty big at Benfica, so he's kind of been a star midfielder for them for a while. So I think it's the unselfishness really stands out, and the way that their coach is, we all talk about in every sport buy-in. The fact that Luis Enrique has made them all buy into this is incredible, because it wouldn't been able to be done last year, and we all know this because literally they basically had the same team without Doué and Kvicha, but plus Mbappe, and this didn't happen. So I think it's pretty impressive.
Yeah, it has been very impressive. And Hector, you mentioned his quote about Mbappe. I pulled it up because I was very intrigued about how reading this. And to Michael Jordan comparison is, I read that you liked Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan would grab his teammates by the balls and defend like a son of a female dog. You have to set the example first as a person, as a player. He goes on, a couple paragraphs worth of commentary. He says, when you press alone as a striker, it's effing amazing. But if you also take Dembele, Koulibaly, Barcola, Ramos, Marco Asensio, and set yourself as an example to press, you know what we have? An effing machine of a team. And I love that line, an effing machine of a team, because that is what this team is. They're a machine, whether it's Kvaratskhelia on one side, Dembele on the other, Barcola, Doué, Fabian Ruiz, who we haven't really talked about, who I think we need to talk about. I think it's time we have that conversation. João Neves, Vitinha, Marquinhos is still there and still dominating as a center back. And you look at that and what that means for this team, what it means to have a stationary presence like Marquinhos in the squad. It's been a fantastic thing for PSG for the years, and he's been a young guy that grew up there. He grew up in Paris as a Brazilian, and Donnarumma with what he's been able to do as a keeper, unfortunately part of the injury to Bayern Munich, Muslera, but you overlooking that, the rest of his tournament has been fantastic. And there's a lot of pieces on this team that Nick, you mentioned unselfish. They got rid of players that could be considered selfish. I hate to use Theo Hernandez as the guy, but he had to go back to AC Milan. They didn't want him anymore. And that's part of what, changes. Hakimi is a great presence on this squad. He's attacking fullback, but he also has, who would have thought, leadership role, and I believe he's 26, 27 now. So you have young guys stepping up as leaders, and I love the Luis Enrique quote about being a leader and what it means to be a leader. You have leaders tracking back, you have leaders playing defense. It makes a machine of a team. I mean, I think that sums up Enrique's thinking completely. Luis Enrique's thinking. Now, as I mentioned, Fabian Ruiz is a guy I don't think gets talked about enough. So I wanted to pose the question to you both. Is he a overlooked star? Or do you think he's just right with how much he's talked about? Do you think he shouldn't be talked about a lot? Or do you think he should be talked about more? Nick, I'm going to start with you on this one.
I think there's two things. One is whenever we get into these overlooked, underrated kind of talks, we can't rate everyone. I always like to remind people, you can't talk about everyone all the time, so someone's always going to get overlooked. I do think he is overlooked, however. I think he's kind of for club and country. If you look at, for his country, he's surrounded by Pedri and Rodrigo in the midfield, and Gavi when he's healthy, and Lamine Yamal in attack, Nico Williams in attack. And then for his club, it's all the stars we've mentioned. But I do think he kind of makes it tick, and he's a veteran presence in there. And I think because he also didn't have the hype up, career that some players move to a big club really early, and it's a big transfer fee. I can't even recall when the transfer to PSG happened and how much it was for. It probably wasn't even, could have been a free, could have been 30 million. It wasn't huge high-profile transfers. So I think he's always kind of been a little underrated. But yeah.
Yeah, he has been there for 3 seasons,
Okay.
by the way. The reason I asked, so far in this tournament, 3 goals and assist as a midfielder. Hector, what are your thoughts on Fabian Ruiz?
He's a guy that I kind of wanted Real Madrid to go after. He's very overlooked. He, at his time in Napoli, really good player, very poised, kind of what you want in the midfield. Look, I've said it when I defended Rodrigo when I said he was going to win the Ballon d'Or, and I'm going to say it again. It's hard to look at stats for midfielders because honestly, what they put into a midfielder. Stats isn't going to be the thing that tells you what a midfielder can do. It's all about the eyeball test, what they do on the pitch, because more often than not, they're creating the goal, they're creating the opportunity. That doesn't mean that they get the assist. That doesn't mean that they're going to get the shot. And those kind of midfielders are really important. You're talking about kind of guys like a Xavi or Iniesta is a little bit above that standard, but guys that just are good at their role and know how to get the ball to their next transition, the next channel. So I think a lot of people, he is a very overlooked player. I think he would have been a great addition to Real Madrid, especially for someone that, no offense, would love to see more Spanish players playing in Real Madrid. And I think he plays very close, similar to that technical style and ability that Spain is very well known for. So that's why I always wanted him in Real Madrid. Obviously, he ended up going to PSG. And, I mean, once again, they're you can say a lot of things for PSG and how they spend their money, but they've so lately, and I'm just gonna point this out lately, they've been very wise with who they go after. It's not just, hey, look, Messi's available. It's not, hey, look, there's Zlatan, or hey, look, there's this, there's that. Instead of going after the name, they're now looking at the players, what they can do, how do they fit to the tactics that now Luis Enrique, who also very smart grab, because once again, we can talk about PSG and all the things they did. I mean, all the managers that they had: Tuchel, Pochettino, Ancelotti. The other Italian manager was with Manchester City. Mancini.
I was like, I can see his face. I can't help you, but
Yeah,
I can see his face.
Mancini. I mean, like the PSG has also gone not only through players, but they have gone through a revolving door of top managers that Unai Emery, the Europa League whisperer, like they've gone through so many managers and no one has been able to unlock this team besides Tuchel, which was also on a COVID year. So take that with a grain of salt. And Luis Enrique, a guy that I think gets overlooked in some aspect, gets overlooked as well because you forget how dominant his Barcelona team was when he was in charge of that team. And I think on top of everything else with PSG and with Fabian Ruiz, I mean, I don't think any of this works unless you have a guy like Luis Enrique who can implement a style of play that these guys can be bought in. And I think that he did it. The way they press is frustrating if you're dealing with it, but very appreciative if you're on the fan side of things. And I think PSG, they're not going anywhere.
Yeah,
they're not going anywhere. They're going to be in more conversations from here on out. And to all the Barca fans that were making fun of Real Madrid, like, oh, Barca would never go through. You guys are going to go straight through the same gauntlet. We saw your defense. So
yeah, it's funny. You mentioned how Fabian Ruiz compares to some of the Spanish greats. I look at him as the Fabregas of the group. He is not that over the top hyped guy like and Iniesta wasn't that guy until Barcelona took off, the tiki taka took off. But Fabregas was the third option in that midfield, really the fourth option when David Silva came in. So then you got overlooked. He was the guy that bounced to the English leagues, bounced back to Spain, bounced to Arsenal after that. So it's like, that's what Fabian Ruiz reminds me of. A guy that maybe, yes, he is Spanish, but he has been Spanish through other countries. Like, he has been developed in a French style, developed in an Italian style, developed in different styles that allow him to be a different talent than we've seen out of Spain. And I think that's what makes him unique. And it's also probably why he gets overlooked in some cases. I'm with you guys. I think he's overlooked. But it happens a lot. We see that with some countrymen Antoine Griezmann is the perfect example for everybody who sees this, as the guy grew up in another country. In his case, he grew up in in Spain, and learned how to play in Spain, and went back to France, and then became a superstar when he was with Atletico Madrid. That's when he was brought into to the French team. But it wasn't until he was like banging on the door, kicking it down with 2 feet, that he got let in. And it feels like with Fabian Ruiz, while he does play for the Spanish team, often gets overlooked. And we see him at PSG right now. Seems to be the thing, the straw that stirs the drink, if I can use a Reggie Jackson quote here. I finally got a baseball reference in one day. How about that? All right, guys, I got to ask the question then. We talked about what they potentially can do for a trophy. 7 trophies in 1 year. On top of that, the UEFA FIFA double. We don't often see it with these tournaments. In this tournament specifically, it's not happened yet because this is the first real edition of the new Club World Cup. The previous 5 editions of what this used to be, yes, we saw it. But before that, it was another 10, 15 years before we had seen it again. Can PSG do that double and potentially get the septuple here? I mean, are we seeing that level of history from them, guys? Like, what are your thoughts as far as going into this game? Are they on a high? Do they need to be careful of any potential pitfalls? Hector, I'm going to go right back to you.
I mean, at the end of the day, they just can't take this lightly. And obviously that goes all the way back to what Luis Enrique has been instilled in them. But I think they're going to go up against an opponent that is very scrappy. There's still a lot of unknowns with this team, a very hot team as well, in my opinion. So and I think that this team could probably be more of a better defensive matchup compared to, Raul Asensio, who is a slip up away from every moment. But I think if you're PSG, you're going to have to do a lot of homework on this Chelsea side, because this team's a little bit of a wild card. I don't know. I don't know how to really grasp what their tactics are, but that it's a team that you shouldn't be overlooking, because this team is going to be gritty. And I mean, you may be fair to say may have an advantage when it comes to the home crowd.
Yeah, there's always a possibility there. Nick, what about you? What are your thoughts on PSG? Are they riding a high after that 4-0 drumming of Real Madrid, or do you think they are going to be settled and Luis Enrique is going to get them ready for this match?
I think they've been riding a high since they beat Inter in the Champions League final 5-0. It seems like they've really been unstoppable, other than Botafogo, which was a weird game in and of itself. Yeah, I mean, I think they can be beat. They don't seem like the most unbeatable team ever. I think if you try to play with them and try to go at them, they'll counter you to death. And I think you almost have to be like, here's the ball, we're going to concede possession, and we're just going to sit back, and when you guys lose the ball and make a mistake, we're just going to try to go. And even that's risky. Can they be beaten? Yeah. Will they? Probably not. They seem so just dominant, and so just locked in is a trendy word, but almost engaged at such a high level, focused so well and really want this.
Yeah, that's a fair. I mean, look, locked in is a fantastic word to use for these situations, because
I feel like all that he just said were just synonyms to locked in.
Yeah, I tried not to use it, and then I basically used it. That's fair. That's fair.
Nothing wrong with it. Nothing wrong with it at all. It is what it is. Hey, look,
they're not locked in, but they're very much focused in this.
Yes, exactly.
You know what? The chamber's been filled. That's at the end of the day, they're ready to launch. No, it reminds me a lot of Barcelona, the tiki-taka style, the Pep rise, if you will. That level of dominance that we saw over a very long tenure, it's very hyped into right now this year for PSG. But look, they got a tough test. They, you know what? They have to go against Chelsea, and let's recap how Chelsea got here. It's been a great run for them as well. 4-1 over Benfica, 2-1 over Palmeiras, and 2-0 over Fluminense. By the way, the Palmeiras goal scored by a soon-to-be Chelsea player once this tournament is over, which I find hilarious of all things. Been a great run for Chelsea to get here. We've talked about it in the last episode, and Hector, you said it in the very first edition, the intro of Summer of Soccer for Belly Up. Chelsea's a team that somehow in these tournaments will make waves. They do these things well. Under a new manager now, and the Italian man has got them rolling here. It's been very interesting to see what Enzo Maresca has to do for this team, and how many changes have come in, and they've worked them all in. There were questions in the group stage whether or not they can get past some of these squads. There were jokes to be had on Twitter at Cole Palmer's expense, but it looks like Cole Palmer might be that guy. Guys, what are your thoughts so far of Chelsea getting through this knockout stage, and what do you feel is kind of their defining moment, or not defining moment, defining ability, I guess, so far to make this team work? Because it doesn't feel like the team that finished fourth in the Premier League last year is the same team that we're seeing on the pitch. This feels like a much better, much more defined team that's coming out day after day. Nick, what's your thoughts on Chelsea?
I definitely think having confidence in your striker is a huge thing. And it's almost maybe it's not a one-to-one comparison, but it's like having confidence in your quarterback, where like if you don't believe the chances you're creating, your striker is going to finish the same way. Like if you're a defense, you don't believe like your offense is going to score 20 points. Like you play differently. And I think the fact of bringing in Delap and then somehow midway through the tournament bringing in Joao Pedro, it's been really impressive. And I think they've played with confidence, like within their striker. And I think we've seen it. And I think, not to hate on Nico Jackson too much, but they're just more like, seems like there's a lot of ability within Delap and Joao Pedro that just isn't in Nico Jackson. And it's they're all different, but it's good.
No, that's a fair assessment. I mean, look, not every striker is going to be the same. We've learned that as American fans time and time again. We don't churn out Mexican strikers like they do, with Chicharito being the exception to how every other striker for Mexico is played. We don't do that for American strikers. So, from looking at this team, yeah, there's absolutely different talents there. Hector, what are your thoughts? What's changed for Chelsea going into this tournament? What is that defining thing, if you can put a finger on it?
Look, I said it when I recapped their run in the Europa League, Europa Conference League. Sorry for anyone that got offended when I said Europa League. Look, they were in a tournament where they were clearly highly, really, actually be the best team in the whole. And I said that, but I said all that because that's how accurate it is. They were the out and right best team in that competition before even the competition started. They should have gone undefeated in that competition. I think technically they did. And I think it's essentially the equivalent of Alabama, and no offense to anybody who competes in the Europa Conference League. I don't want to take that away from you. Sorry, Raul Betis, by the way, as well, because I was rooting for you. But it was the equivalent of Alabama going up. Okay, I guess we can't use Alabama anymore. What's a good college football team right now?
Ohio State.
Georgia.
Ohio State or Georgia.
Okay, it's like Ohio State going up against a junior college and just having like a straight season against a bunch of junior colleges. Like, it was never close. It was never going to be close. And I think for Chelsea and Enzo, especially because we're still, I guess, technically in Enzo's first year as manager for Chelsea, this guy who a lot of people were like, I don't know. Talk about a revolving door of managers, by the way, with Chelsea. This guy promoted like Leicester City. Sorry for all the people that can get mad if I said Leicester. Leicester City got Leicester City promoted, and then Chelsea's like, come over here, which is what happens when teams get promoted. Like, they lose their players, and that it just happens. But to lose your coach, it's a little another like elbow to the stomach right there. But I think Enzo comes in with a mentality. He's been very open with all that he's talked about in this tournament. His thoughts on the delays. Look, we can't control the weather here in the U.S. Maybe not have competitions in Florida when it's in the tropical storm season. But that's just me. Just my thought.
Yeah.
Just
that's fair. I think that's an absolute fair thing. Maybe we need to go on the Qatari schedule when it comes to games.
But no, hell no. But yeah. So I mean, for Chelsea, I think it's a mentality. One, you spend God knows how much money on this roster, to the point. Yeah, you have so many players that you don't even have locker room space in your locker room. Hopefully, they're trimming the fat. Unfortunately, Manduki is going to Arsenal for some weird reason, and so they'll be doing that. But yeah, I think Joao Pedro making his debut, and beautifully, by the way, beautiful debut for himself. Delap, looks very much like a guy that came out of the Man City academy. And talk about academy products for Manchester City. Cole Palmer, who once again was dubbed the number 10, and I told you guys that I think that this is going to be the time that we're going to see things clicking for Chelsea, and it all started with them just shellacking everybody in the Europa Conference League.
Yeah, you mentioned the amount of players, by the way. They have approximately 25 players in their under contract that do not have a number today that are eligible for this tournament. That's not including the 35 they brought on this trip. And by the way, one of those that does not have a locker space, Joao Felix. We all know who he is. We all have heard his name many a times. Cannot break in. However, one Portuguese player, Pedro Neto, is leading the team in goals. So talk about another striker, a new striker that is developing and playing well for this squad. It's been a very interesting thing to watch, top to bottom. Cole Palmer, most attempts on goal right now for Chelsea, 17 in the tournament. Pedro Neto also has the most amount of crosses in the tournament for Chelsea. They're coming through multiple different outlets to try to score, and it's very interesting to see with Chelsea, whereas last year it felt like they were very focused. And it almost felt like a kind of lucky goal when they would get one. It would be Cole Palmer, and that was it. And then potentially a Kai Havertz situation coming off of a Reece James cross. Like those were the moments for that squad, and it wasn't great at all. I guess it was Nico Johnson, not Kai Havertz, but still, it's been a rough time. I guess Chelsea before this, and now you see Chelsea playing out of their minds. It feels like Marc Cucurella not slipping on the pitch anymore and throwing his Pumas in the trash can. So great stories all around.
Yeah.
Now, Hector, I gotta say, man, you called this early on. You talked about it. You talked about it on your show first, then you talked about it in our intro episode. It's a tourney that Chelsea can make waves and ride it into next season. They're here. They're in the finals. Plus I think 1,400 odds to win the tournament pre-tournament. You're here now. Can you figure it out? Can they finish it off, Hector? Do you think they have enough in the tank to beat this PSG team? Don't give me your pick, but do they have the potential to beat them?
It's just something weird about Chelsea, man. Like it doesn't matter who's in charge. They're just built for tournaments. They're just, it's in their DNA. If you wear that blue stupid jersey, you're just capable of being good in competitions. Mind you, Chelsea made Tuchel look like a genius, but then obviously fell off at the end. But it's what they do. Jose Mourinho, can't forget about his tattoo. So I mean, like, it's just what Chelsea does when it comes to these competitions, when it comes to these tournaments. They know how to be a pest. They know how to attack. They figure out. I think one of the most, in every time I've watched them play in competitions, you're talking about a team that just knows how to adjust in game, which apparently now is a very impressive feature to have, the ability to adapt to a game.
Who would have thought?
And also, their road was not easy. I mean, besides Benfica, but I mean, you went up against Fluminense. You went up against Palmeiras. Palmeiras, who I would argue is probably the better Brazilian side. But the reason why the Brazilian teams have done so well in this competition is because they're in their element. They're in the, while these Chelsea was complaining about the weather as well. But as these European sides were complaining about the weather, Brazil was just like, this is a Tuesday for us. This
is a reprieve for us. What are you talking about?
This is nice weather. 80 degrees, like, sign me up.
85% humidity and 90 outside. Great.
Yeah, so I mean, like, it's to think with that, it's just grit, and I think that gives that I know every American cliche of hearing the American analysts say grit when it comes to how a team plays, but when you have to go against those South American sides, and when you have to go in their element, there's some grit that comes into play. Cole Palmer, he had a massive chip on his shoulder when Man City let him go, and he went to Chelsea, obviously for financial reasons that Man City may or may not still be dealing with right now. But that's this as a team with a chip on their shoulder. You got Enzo Fernandez, who has I would say not bad. Even Cucurella doesn't look as stupid. So I think this team is clicking, and I think that the mentality that this team has, they don't care who's in front of them. They're gonna give them a show.
Yeah. Nick, what about you? What are your thoughts on this Chelsea team? Do they have enough in them to get it over the finish line to win this tournament? Or do you think there's some pitfalls to be careful of?
I think they do have to be aware and wary of PSG in every asset when PSG has the ball. I think it's going to come down to how well are their center backs defending and how well are their wide backs defending. If they're going to have any chance. I know in the midfield, Caicedo is kind of a destroyer. And this could be like, I know we said kind of a meme statement, but it could be his legacy game where he just kind of dominates the midfield against PSG and really like shows why he was worth all that money. But I mean, it's one game. They have a chance. It's not over 2 legs. If it over 2 legs and like a Champions League knockout, I'd be like, maybe not. But yeah, they can win it. And Cole Palmer, him and maybe Caicedo are the 2 players you'd be like, oh, if they were like able to switch to PSG, they could start and they could play like right away. Versus most of the other Chelsea players would probably be on the bench.
That's fair. There might be a couple that you can sneak in there right now. Not very many open positions, but they're on a PSG.
I would argue Enzo Fernandez.
Yeah, Enzo has been a very interesting story, right? We had the whole drama with Mudryk last year that he's not even on the trip, if that tells you anything.
I mean, he has no number right now.
Yes, zero roster number, not even on the trip, probably going to be shipped out.
Not even ended. In FIFA anymore.
Yeah,
not even in the game.
So you had that. Enzo was definitely damaged by that just from playtime and having a disconnect in the midfield last year and into the strike partnership. Now this year, without the drama that is Mudryk and Raheem Sterling in the squad and all that Joao Felix nonsense, you see Enzo really showing why he was the young Argentinian coming forward.
I believe he's also wearing the armband.
He's a vice captain technically, but this tournament, it's Reece James and him that have worn the armband both in multiple. They're the only 2. But that does make me wonder if you look at Enzo and what he's been doing. I mentioned Cole Palmer. Is this a pairing for the future to be afraid of? If you're an Arsenal fan, if you're a Liverpool fan, if you're a Man United fan, can these 2 carry the Chelsea banner in the likes we haven't seen since the Drogba, Lampard, Terry days? Is this what we see with Chelsea going forward? Or do you think if they stumble here, do you think it might falter that? Nick, go ahead.
I would say whatever happens on Sunday, that's when the game is Sunday.
Yep, Sunday at 3.
Whatever happens on Sunday, I think the momentum they've created for this tournament, just making the final, is enough to see them through and have a pretty good season in the Premier League. And in terms of the future, like maybe 3 to 5 seasons, definitely. I think Chelsea's model was built on the future. That if you get all this young talent, give them 1,000-year contracts, and just basically let them develop, they'll kind of come up together, and you won't have to sell them, because if someone wants to get them away, you'll be like, well, they have a contract for 950 more years, so you can't get them.
That's a fair truth to that. Hector, I know as an Arsenal fan, it hurts you to maybe think about a potential dominant force in Chelsea blue. But do you think this Enzo Cole Palmer pairing is something to be kind of nervous of? Do you think it's something that could change the future of Chelsea?
I think it already has, honestly, man. Like, I think, when the whole drama with the addition of the Todd Bowley era, I think everyone was very skeptical of what he was going on. You saw him splurge his money. He fired Tuchel because he didn't want to bring in Cristiano Ronaldo. Like the guy was trying to bring up an all-star game for the English Premier League. Thank Jesus Christ. I'm glad somebody shut him up. But this was the culmination. This was where everything's just coming into full fruition for Chelsea. Why all that madness was happening. Why, everyone was at some point was begging that the old owner would come in and free them from this torture from Bowley. Maybe some still. I don't blame him, because Todd Bowley is kind of an idiot. But at the same time, I think that this is just a team that's you spend all that money, you're not getting like bad players. Maybe some of them haven't panned out, but a good group of them has worked, and I think Enzo Fernandez and Cole Palmer are proof that there's players on this team that can work, and I think that we saw it last season when they weren't much. They only qualified for a Conference League spot, and that's why they were in the Conference League. Now they're in the Champions League, not because they wanted a Europa Conference League, because they finished in the top 4. So that's not a fluke. Like, this team is figuring things out. I think that they're just going to keep getting better. I think Enzo is the right manager for this team. Funny enough, Enzo and Enzo. But I think that they got the right manager for this team. They believe in him. I hope they have the right players now. But I think that and the Premier League is going to be really interesting, right? You have Man City that many people are wondering, what are we going to see them after an embarrassing last season for them? Still made it to Champions League somehow. Arsenal, are they going to finally figure things out, or are they just going to bottle? Because I mean, they just took another Chelsea piece of trash, and so I don't like what's going on over there. And then you got Liverpool. Are they is it gonna be a sophomore slump for Arne Slot, or are they gonna be the new standard for the Premier League for a while? I think that it's very much open this season for the Premier League. And I think Chelsea have definitely put their names in the ballot to be a force to be reckoned with in the Premier League next season.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. You look at this one as very interesting, right? This is just going to be an interesting matchup top to bottom. I do want to throw out, you mentioned some players. They do have 2 Americans on the Chelsea roster, Caleb Wiley and then a goalkeeper whose name is running away from me right now, who, by the way, did not get a shout in the Gold Cup whatsoever. Gabriel Slonina. But
is he back now?
Yeah, he is, and he actually has a roster number for Chelsea.
Whoa.
Right. He might get loaned out.
Yeah, Caleb Wiley is loaned out. But I just throw that out there as Americans. The reason why you mentioned earlier, they might have a fan base kind of advantage here. Chelsea has development clubs all across the United States. So when you talk about American, maybe a 12th man, if you will, there is a bit of a presence with Chelsea development academies in the U.S. There's not as many PSG academies here in the U.S. So just something to think about when you go into this game. Now,
there's so many people that like Chelsea. Like,
yeah,
I feel like
I still don't get that why.
Chelsea is like the hipster pick. Like, I don't know what it is about it, but I know so many Americans that love Chelsea. I still, for the life of me, have no idea. But this is also coming a guy that likes Arsenal, so I can't say anything. That's also another hipster team. But yeah, no, I think I'm
a Liverpool fan, so I don't know where we're going with it.
I don't think
there's a bunch of Man United and Chelsea fans because that's what it was in the early 2000s, and we've talked about this before on your show. Nick, I know you're a little bit younger than us, so you don't have this remember this as much. But FS1 used to only air the game of the week, and the game of the week during that time frame was the Cristiano Ronaldo, Ryan Giggs, Wayne Rooney era Man Uniteds versus the Didier Drogba, Frank Lampard, John Terry led Petr Cech Chelsea teams. And that was always what we saw on Saturday. And that was the only game we saw on Saturday that was Premier League, unless you watched it through some very fuzzy channels that I don't think many of us got. And then finally,
or you want to get some viruses on your computer.
Yeah, that was later than FS1 too. So that's part of it. You talk about some of these fan bases here when they carry over to America and what American soccer really means. Those are your fans you're going to see out there. You're going to see the rabid fans that used to watch fuzzy games on a Sunday morning because it's a playback from the Saturday night games that care. But guys, we got to get into it, right? This is the final, so we got to make our picks. Hector won the Gold Cup pick. He was the only one that picked Mexico. So Hector, you get to lead us off here. Chelsea a plus 410 underdog here. PSG minus 170 favorite. Hector, where are you going here?
As much as I would like to say Chelsea somehow can get this done, because I think I just need a break from seeing any PSG badges, or which is funny because I have a Sergio Ramos kid from his time at PSG. But like I just need some time off from anything PSG. But yeah, I just can't see it. I think this PSG team is just so complete. The way they're gonna press is gonna be very rough for Chelsea. I do praise their ability to adapt, but that is the way that team plays, and as very well fit that PSG team is. Yeah, and also no complaints much from PSG. I will say that throughout the tournament, not many complaints from PSG. So they, they were focused. They were not locked in, but focused. So
Yes, thank you.
but yeah, so I got PSG. I think that this is gonna be a good performance for them. I think Dembele solidifies his status as the Ballon d'Or winner for this year.
Okay. Now, Nick, are you locked in on PSG on this one, or are you going to go with the upstart Chelsea here? Upstart seems very mean, but I got to go with it right now.
Yeah, I think just the PSG front line versus the Chelsea back line is just a crazy mismatch, and I think PSG is going to win. And I think it might be a little bit similar to the Madrid game where they might score like 1 or 2 early, and then because the game's in the middle of the day, it's still going to be pretty hot. That the game's almost going to slow down a little bit, and that's probably going to favor PSG a little bit more. So yeah. PSG.
All right. PSG. And look, if you guys remember back to the first episode, you know my pick already because it was the pick for our belly up best bets. And that's right, that was PSG. I picked it before the tournament. I still have the futures bet writing. So maybe if they don't win, it's on me, guys. I'm sorry, but I have to stick with my, I picked them. I got to go with it. But we're all riding with PSG. Yeah, it's a surprise. I'll give you guys one last chance. Are you sure you all want to go PSG?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Knowing what you know now, we're still going to ride PSG. Bettors out there, bet responsibly. Don't bet more than you can. And don't use us as actual advice. Use us as, hey, just as a helpful, maybe if you want to. Put $1 on it. Don't put more. All right, guys, that'll do it for a summer of soccer. Hector, I imagine you guys are going to have a recap when you guys come back from this summer of soccer as well. Nick, I imagine that you got a few articles up your sleeve.
Yeah, I got
to go
in the chamber.
he's locked in on a few articles here.
Yes.
Hector, as our winner from the picks last week, you also get to start off here. Tell everybody where to find you. Tell everybody how to get Insert Name FC in front of their face, in their ears. How do they get you?
Wherever you get your podcast fix from, Insert Name FC. Check us out on the YouTube channel. We do normally post episodes on Thursdays. Obviously, we're still in the off season, so we will have a recap episode for the FIFA Club World Cup final. So there will be a recap of that. I think Gold Cup? We dropped it on Tuesday.
Yep.
So it might be something random just like that as well. So because once again, we're still on break mode, so that episode would just be strictly that recap. But find us on all social media at Insert Name FC. If you guys want to see me getting constantly trolled on our social media platforms, that's where you go get it.
Look, your guys' trolling on Insert Name FC is top level. I'll never forget the "please not again" memes every time Arsenal dropped something. Nick, how is everybody going to find all of your articles and everything you do?
You'd follow me on Twitter at Nik Gable 37, and then my articles are on bellyupsports.com.
Awesome. And Nick, you got some nice articles come out recently. I know basketball is also one of your favorites, soccer being what it is. Anything you want to tease coming up for any of your articles?
Gold Cup, I know it's a little late. Gold Cup recap, just the USA perspective. And then I'm going to be looking at the rookie max extensions that have happened lately in the basketball.
I can't wait for that. I know they're also in their summer games right now. But no, you can find myself and DJ, my co-host, over at High Low Sports. If you guys care about any general sports, we do talk pretty much everything under the sun. And we give you the highs and lows and all the fun, stupid, intricate things like fun with flags and everything in between. But guys, we appreciate it as always. And before we let you go, real quick, one takeaway from the summer of soccer in America. Nick, take it away.
Excitement. I'm excited for the World Cup. Even though the USA didn't have the best finish to their tournament, I'm still excited about some of the players.
All right. Hector, what about you?
If FIFA wants the World Cup to be good in 2026, they do not need to be accommodating for Europe. Play the games in times where it's reasonable for Americans, people that are traveling to the US, can get to. Yes, traffic is a pain in the you know what. I get that. But guess what? If it's later in the day, that's not going to be as much of a problem. So, look, I get it, but hey, I had to wake up at 4 a.m. or 3 a.m. to watch the 2002 World Cup final in Japan. Korea and Japan. I had to wake up at 3 a.m. and I remember my dad waking me up. I was literally in my underwear watching that game because once I was a child. And then, so if we can do it, if you're a true fan of the game, you don't care what time it is, you'll watch it. So I think that if FIFA had learned anything from this competition, if you don't want to deal with the heat, well, fun fact, when the sun's down, is not as bad. So I think if anything from FIFA, if they took anything from this, is put these games at a later time slot. Europe will watch.
Yeah. Look, 5 p.m. earliest period start time, local time, anywhere in the U.S. That needs to be the earliest any of these games. And that could be the really weak games. I don't care. But weekend games, you can start at noon. That's fine. Weekday games, you got to start at 5 p.m. earliest time. 5, 7, 8, somewhere in that range. Like, make it work. 6, 8, 10 if you need to get 3 games in the day. Make it work. I agree with you, Hector, on that one. For me, it's fix the fields. Plant the fields now. Get it over with. Stop trying to milk this. Let's just roll out the turf. We saw it in the Gold Cup final. That turf at times felt like dead turf. And then at other points in times, it was an ice rink. You just don't know what you're going to get with these rolled out turfs.
Except for NRG Stadium.
Yeah, NRG Stadiums, look, if it's actual grass. Like, that's when they actually use it, it's fine. Everything else, just, whatever. But look, just roll out, get the grass done, figure it out. I don't care. We got all the technology. Literally, Real Madrid grows their grass underground. Make it happen, world. But guys, that'll do it for us here on the Belly Up Summer of Soccer 2025. Stay tuned for the Club World Cup finals, and stay tuned for everything coming out after that from Hector, Nick, and myself over at High Low Sports. And yes, that's right. We will have more fun with flags as we get closer to the World Cup next year, 2026, here in the United States. Don't worry, I have a bunch more facts I've been working on for that. So stay tuned for that coming sometime next year. All right, guys, until next time, we appreciate you, and we'll see you again soon.